You're listening to Restoration Conversation. I'm Christina Stewart.
And I'm Annabelle Nakabili-Sebachije, and we love sharing stories of rescue and restoration.
Hi, it's Bethany, and thanks for joining us again. I'm here with Annabelle and Christina from the Remnant Generation and Impact Nations, and we are talking about the really important topic of leadership. And these two women are just powerhouse leaders. I'm really, really privileged to have the opportunity to interview them and also to have served under their leadership. So today, I want to pick up on our topic of leadership and talk about creating culture. And I think culture is something that can easily slip through the cracks of an organization, and it can evolve organically, but not necessarily intentionally or even organically as one might want it to evolve. And so as you have both built your respective organizations, can you talk about the culture that you strove to create? And then what are some of the things that you did to help create that culture?
You're writing, I'll talk. I was thinking about the first time I met you, and it was, you came on a journey of compassion. And
I did, actually. It was here in Uganda,
Yeah.
7 years ago, I think.
And so when someone new comes on a trip, our sense is that they've joined the family. And it's their choice how involved they get with that family, but it's here on offer. And I don't know that it was as intentional as you make it sound. That would be really smart. I think it was just who Steve and I are. So our home is always open. We always have a you come to kind of an attitude. Come as you are, you'll be loved, all these little phrases. And I don't think we set out to create family, but I have a memory of something that happened on a trip that I went, oh, where we were in the immigration lineup in a country, and a few of us had come on one plane. What makes Impact Nations a little different, it's not like a church mission organization where a whole bunch of you get on a plane together and go somewhere. We're coming from all over the world, and so we're in the immigration lineup. And a man came into the room from his plane and joined the lineup, and there was a man from some other country who was already in the lineup. And this man saw that man, and I have a picture of him practically leaping across the boundaries to be able to hug his friend that he hadn't seen for some years because he was on some other trip. And that was like really early years. And I realized, oh my goodness, it works. If this is a high value for us, this sense of belonging, this sense of every person on the team is important, everyone has something to contribute, we can't do it without you, that creates the culture that we're looking for. To the extent that when we encounter people in the developing world, that's something they respond to. So we were doing medical clinics in India many, many years ago, and there was a Hindu doctor who had been assigned to spend a day, leave the hospital, go spend a day with this group. They're coming to do medical clinics. You go help. So he spent the first day. Then he asked if he was allowed to come back tomorrow. So of course we said yes. So he ended up doing 6 medical clinics with us in the time that we were there. And on the last day, when we were, as a team, we were debriefing and so on, this man shows up at the gate where we're staying, and he's got his 2 daughters hand in hand, and he asks to come and speak to us. And he said, first he was astounded by our love for his people. Like, why would these people come from across the world to help them? And then he said, and then I found out that you didn't know each other. I watched all of you. You didn't know each other before you came to this country, and now you're this amazing group that's doing all this, and they work so well together, and he just was very excited about it. And then he said, I want what you have. What is this thing that you have that makes you so different than everybody else? And of course, for us, it was Jesus. But it was such a blessing to know that he recognized this family.
Yeah.
And, when Steve and I found out that people were, flying to other countries and staying with their friends or going off on vacations together, it was just like this delight, because family is so important to us. So.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, having participated in your culture of family, I certainly feel that way. And I think you said at the beginning, maybe it wasn't necessarily intentional, but I think the ways that I have felt a part of your family are, you've actively become one of my mentors. And if you don't hear from me every month, I hear from you. There's definitely a check-in point there.
And it's so humbling to me, someone of your stature in the business world, and what do I know? But I think it's a mutual thing. Yes, there's mentoring, but there's also I'm receiving as well.
Well,
so.
It's a beautiful friendship, and one that I really, really appreciate. But it's not even only you from your organization who calls me. I occasionally get calls from Tim, your son Tim, who's CEO now of the organization, or Steve will even send me a note or give me a phone call from time to time. So it's coming back to kind of where we started at the beginning when you said, leadership is inclusive and accessible. And, here you are globe-trotting, you and Steve globe-trotting around the world normally, and yet you make time to text me and call me, and there's just this incredible accessibility to you as a leadership, and really fosters that feeling of family with Impact Nations. So, Annabelle, we've given you some time to think about your answer over here. So what gems do you have for us about creating a culture?
Creating a culture. I'm so fascinated by the response Mama Christina gave about the family thing, and I find that very powerful. It's just kind of rubbed off so well to so many of us here. But Bethany, one thing that I have learned on my leadership journey, and I've not been at it for long, I'm still learning, but one of the things I'm continuing to learn is that vision leaks, and so does culture. So if it takes a certain level of intentionality to keep the culture growing, but also the understanding that because we work with different people, and they have their own passions as well and dreams, and not everyone that walks into, especially in terms of staffing, not everyone that comes into our workspace is, for lack of a better word, like 100% sold out to that. Or some of them will have like a particular time frame in their mind. They'll be like, I'll be there, work a job for 2 years, and then save up for something, or travel and go abroad, or get married and move to another town. So you realize that many times you have then to work with different people. You recruit, train, and then people leave. Then you recruit, train, and then people leave. I'm thankful that God has blessed us to have at least our cohort staff that have worked with us for more than 5 years, and some have been there for as long as the organization has been there officially, which is a blessing. But we've also had transitions happening. So, and whenever the transitions happen, you know that the culture, is also leaking, like people are leaving.
Yeah, you're using a really interesting phrase, and I love it, but can you maybe just expand on the culture leaks?
The culture leak, it evaporates. How do I say? So, for example, we learned about evaporation in school, and they say that, when for example, if you have a saucepan of water and put it outside, and then you just leave it, it will evaporate. When you come and check on it, the level at which you left it will not be the same. No one poured it, no one touched it, it just keeps going. Just because there are so many other factors that are coming against this culture, are coming against this very thing. Many other factors, because people are dynamic. You want to be inclusive. You want to bring young people. You work with the middle-aged. You want to work with the older ones, and everyone has a different belief system. They see things differently. Young people now are hyper excited. They want to come to work wearing jeans and t-shirts, and then the older ones feel like, oh, that is too indecent. That's not appropriate. And then you're going out in the communities, and they're completely different perspectives. And then every day you have the challenge of saying, how do I tie these knots together to make something work? Because you realize that what works in the context The context that applies to Kampala, for example, is not the same context that applies in the Antonde, because you're dealing with two different cultures, like in the nature of people are different. So the social workers cannot go to the community wearing, revealing their legs. They can't. If you're going to a Muslim school for an outreach, you cannot wear shorts or jeans. You have to dress up differently. And then so that makes, okay, if you're going to say our culture here is that we dress young, smart, professional, then you realize at some point you have to redefine what young, smart, and professional means. You say, look, let's get a dress so that then it doesn't matter which audience you're in, you're still smart, you look young, but you're decent, and you can step into any space without fear. And then when you're going into youthful engagements, of course, when you show up in a long skirt or something, kids will be like, oh yeah, right, there goes mama again, like they're going to listen.
That's why we're wearing t-shirt and jeans today. Like I've been wearing dresses for 2 weeks.
And then we're actually in an office with a lot of young professionals,
Exactly.
So we could get away with some
because then
t-shirt.
they're not going to connect with you. They feel like you're coming to just tell them how bad they are and what they haven't done. So meaning that culture keeps leaking, and then the role that you have as a leader is to make sure, how do you tie the knots at every time and look out for what do you modify, what do you compromise, what adjustments do you make. But then there are also those things that you cannot compromise on. I think they are the basics that you cannot compromise on.
So what are some of the things?
So for example, in the Remnant generation, we are a Christ-centered ministry. Our basis, our calling, where we draw our philosophy of ministry is Isaiah 61. Like everyone will sing Isaiah 61. Even the girls will know Isaiah 61. And so when you come and you're working, but you have a problem with prayer or the anointing or the Holy Spirit, it might be a difficult place for you to work, because then it's the whole thing of the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, for He has anointed me for a mission. So you come into that place with the understanding, or even, okay, maybe by the time you come in, you don't understand that, but when you come, you agree that I'm going to learn, or I'm going to understand that this is ministry. This is not just any other workplace. This is ministry. So we are not going to be paid for everything. You're not going to, if you're working overtime, you're not going to expect an extra paycheck. If you are, you're not supposed to expect certain things. You're expected to tithe, and our HR is going to ask for your tithe records from your church. Yeah, because then if you're going to be a Christ-centered ministry, there are some principles that we respect and we walk in, and that is part of our culture. We don't compromise on that. We are pro-life and pro-family. Like, we are not going to promote contraception. We are not going to promote abortions. We are not going to refer girls that are coming to us that have been raped and then telling them like, oh, it's okay, you're pregnant, but you're too young. Let's just get this abortion done with. We have failed to get access to funding, Bethany. Like, sometimes I think about it, and there are many times, some of my program staff have echoed it, and they're like, if only we could accept to maybe just provide training on contraceptive use and referral. It's not us doing it, then maybe this funding would have come. There are people that have wanted us to promote, to provide services to boys that identify as girls. And they're like, but they are being sexually abused, and they cannot go to a male facility because they identify as girls, and they want to refer them to us because of our experience with dealing with survivors of sexual abuse. And they're like, we cannot do it, because that is not that we are discriminative, but we shall refer that young man to a male facility that has the experience. We don't have that experience.
You have to protect the girls.
And we have to protect the girls that are in our care, So there are those things where you have realized it's going to cost me, finances, it's going to cost me what looks like opportunity, but at the end of that day, those are my values, and I cannot compromise on them. And then there are things like, we don't compromise on generosity. Like, basically, if you're part of the Remnant generation, I'm sure for the week you've been there, generosity is part of our bloodline. People go out of their way. We're not at the side of where we're waiting to say, oh, we need to do this, but then I don't have money, I don't know what to do. Our staff, they understand that, if something needs to get done, If it means to use your personal resources, you're going to have to do that. Not because they are forcing you, but because you believe in the vision. You believe in what we are trying to achieve. And you're going to be generous with your time, with your talent, with your giftings, with your resources, with your connections, with your networks. So don't just sit there and wait for Annabelle to be the one knocking on the doors. If you know somebody, come on, give me the contact. So you're generous with your connections. There's no room for just self-centeredness and selfishness, because then we are not going to be able to extend the compassion that we so desire. And so that is how we try to build a culture. And like I said, it's a constant challenge, because then people have different belief systems and mindsets. We come from different family backgrounds, but you try to find roots, things that you realize, okay, these ones you're not going to compromise on. You can compromise on dress code, you can compromise on eating hours, sign in and sign out hours. Today is Monday, by the time you're recording this, and we expect that everyone should be in office, but our team has a day off. But our human resource policy says it's part of our culture to be in office from Monday to Friday, from 8 in the morning to 5 in the evening. But why are we on a day off? Because people have worked 2 weeks in a row without rest, and then realize that, okay, today is Monday, yes, it's the first day in the week of official work, yes, have a day off. So we can compromise on those areas and say, okay, maybe some people can come in late. If you have to come in, can you come in at 10 instead of 8? But we cannot compromise on certain grounds.
Yeah, thank you for that. So you've talked about how culture can leak and maybe some of the good things can come out, but I also just want to touch on, have you had the experience of things creeping into your culture that you didn't want to be there, and how do you make a shift after you've realized that there are some things perhaps that are not healthy in the culture? How do you cleanse your culture and get back to the essence of what your culture should be?
My answer is short and quick. Overtrain. And I think we have learned to train everything and not take anything for granted. We just continue teaching and training the team and emphasizing who we are, what we do, what our values are, and re-echoing that, and then actively watching that people are understanding, not just from the training of saying, oh, I attended ticker box, but are you able to model it out? Are you living it out? We had a time when we had some of our staff that still believed in the culture of spanking children. It's an African thing, like when you're indisciplined, you just turn around and give you a bit of spank. So it was a disciplinary thing, and somebody just went out of their way, and this girl had misbehaved. They had abused the staff. They had fought in the shelter, and then they were like, you can't. And then she kept on telling a lie instead of being apologetic and to regret what her actions are. So then during the disciplinary, she was meant to lie down, and they beat her twice, and she was not pregnant. She was she had already given birth and all that. But we realized no, this is not to immediately have a meeting now with the girls, do a child protection training, what is acceptable discipline, what is not acceptable, and how to deal with conflict resolution, and just go over it over and over again.
So you really jumped on an incident that was out of alignment with the culture right away, corrected it, provided additional training, and re-explained the company or the organization's values. Christina, did you have any examples?
What came to mind when you
leadership?
said that was, like most nonprofits, or maybe all, we have a board of directors. And we've always sought to have a variety of people on that board. So people in ministry, people in business, so that different perspectives and different gifts come to that board. And there's certain rules and regulations. We're authorized in Canada, the US, and Australia. And so you're trying to find a working group who can support you and help with the vision and help with the execution of the vision, but that really do have the same values, and then perhaps hopefully have perhaps some finances to give toward it, or some connections that are going to help us get where we're going. And Steve and I have always found it a challenge, because things can get steered one way or the other, especially with those two things. I mean, that can happen to us with Journeys of Compassion. We'll have some countries we go to where they're like, you need to do this medical clinic, and they've got a lot of practical things, which is important, and we like to do that. But they don't have what for us is also the important side of the spiritual depth and the opportunities and spreading the gospel and church planting. So that can happen on a journey, but in a board, there have been different seasons where we felt that it was pulling over toward the business side. And I think it always will. It'll go to the practical and the business. Because that's quantitative, and you can have spreadsheets, and you can have lists and tick boxes, and the board people, they're also overseeing your finances, and they want the numbers to add up, and that's great, and you need those guidelines. But we operate out of faith. And so somehow those two have to come together. And so there's been times when Steve and I have said, okay, we're feeling the drift over in this direction, and how can we course correct to bring it back to the place? And we're not excluding this one. We have to walk that balance of being fiscally responsible, responsible to the government regulations, and they're different in different countries, so that's a challenge for us. But making sure that the vision and the values are being walked out and not pulled off course by well-meaning people. They're not wrong. It has to fit. It has to flow.
So what I have been hearing both of you say, actually, as we've talked about culture, is that it's really intricately linked to not only the mission of the organization, but also the values of the organization, and that it's really critical to consistently come back to those values, and that is the guidance for how you're assessing what things can and cannot be a part of a healthy culture.
I mean, even what you're saying about coming back to the values and what you said about assessing, you said that earlier, like, if you're able to sit with your people, whether it's your staff or your board or your volunteers, and say, here's what we've accomplished, and you can celebrate those things, that's going to help keeping them on the straight and narrow, right? Like, you need to celebrate the good things that God has done and that your people have contributed to, and what their money has accomplished, and that's a really important part of culture as well, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a really important part of culture, whether you're talking about a ministry or a nonprofit or a business. I mean, that point of celebrating the achievement along the way, because it's, as you said, you can't just be busy, you can't just be doing things, there have to be results from it, right? So celebrating the results.
Can I add on to something that I'm picking from Mama Christina's wisdom? And it's the fact that, as a leader, you're the first custodian of culture. The tone of your organization or company or ministry is going to be a representation of what you believe in and who you are. Many times, because it's the same head that is running the organization or ministry is the same head that is running your personal life, and usually it tends to drift, to that side. So, and many times when people are coming in with, like Mama has said, well-meaning suggestions of, investment opportunities you need to explore, you need to go back to the seed. Like, what is it that, in the first place that you believed in? Why are you doing what you're doing? Who you are and what you hold dear. And because then the temptation will always present itself, I think, if not now, in the near future, many times there is always that temptation to fall off and lean onto the wide and exciting journey and get off the narrow and right path. So as a leader, just to constantly come back to a self-check of whether you're still holding onto the balance of who you are. And because as the ministry grows, as businesses grow, the temptation to over multiply or to conquer and take territory or to overgrow profit or to become just the pride of life can sway you off and you lose focus. But getting back to the ground of why are we here, and I love the fact that if it is a calling. It is there is a seed, or even if it's business, even business is calling. You know, if you realize that God has given me this gift and it's a seed, and I have to steward it well, and I believe, you know, in this particular thing. So other aspects don't take you off course. Yeah.
So, wow, amazing. For our listeners, I just want to remind you that you can view the entire interview on the Impact Nations website, and I will leave that in the post so you can find your way there. So, welcome back. I am Bethany, and I am here with Annabelle from the Remnant Generation and Christina from Impact Nations. We've been having a really dynamic discussion on leadership and some of the principles of leadership that you have integrated into your organizations. And where we just left off was with Annabelle talking about really keeping the focus as a leader and deciding, you know, what is still in scope and what's out of scope, and not drifting away, as you said, with the pride of life, but really ensuring that you're staying on track and adhering to the mission of the organization. So maybe can we just unpack that a little bit further, and also I think something that you both do really well in your organizations is tracking the results that you have. So maybe talk about how you keep your focus, how you look at the results you're getting, analyze them, and decide then what your next moves are.
Can I go first? All right. Thank you, Bethany. So one of the things that helps us to keep the focus is that we have narrowed down our entire mission to a model that we've called the 3RT model. So it's the 3RT to represent rescue, restoration, repurpose, and at the end of the journey, we're seeing girls thrive. So whatever shape, you know, geographical location, the interventions might take, those four things that have to be evident. Was a life rescued? Has there been, you know, restoration? Do we see repurposing? Do we see this girl that we rescued from, you know, out of vulnerability, broken and abused? Have they restored spiritually, physically? Is the family relationship restored? Have they had access to justice? Is their health restored? And at the end of the journey, we should be able to track the thriving. We should be able to see that they are excelling. They are different from how we found them. And thriving can be different things at different levels. So for example, for a girl you've rescued from the street, thriving would be that they have a safe place to stay, where they have a warm bed, access to food, access to clothing and healthcare, and they are safe. So they are thriving in that environment. So you're able to track thriving at that level. Mm-hmm. If they are pregnant, then but they are, you know, and they didn't have access to antenatal care, vitamins, or all that, then you're able to say, oh, now the hospital records show they are not malnourished, their babies are doing well according to ultrasound scan reports. The pregnant mother is healthy, she's eating well, she's showing signs of progress. That is thriving. So at whichever level of our intervention, we are looking out for the 3RTs, and we rate ourselves based on those milestones in every child and at every journey. And then we have what we call the individualized care approach. So even if all the girls like her come with relatively similar situations, there has been abuse, there is poverty, there is lack of access to school, lack of access to healthcare support. Even if the stories look similar, each story is unique in its own way and different. So what we do is that for every girl, there is a planned care program that we call the individualized care program. And it can be stressing when you have 1,000 girls to work with. But then, we have developed a system that is helping us to do that. That is an online system where we are able to enter information. We have a document that we have learned and got from other organizations that have had prior experience in the field, and we are able to assess in the key domains of child well-being, and then we are able to track at household level, at health level, at empowerment level, at economic level, at the different levels, and then we come up with a plan for this girl and say, okay, when she moves from stage A to stage B at health, then we know we are achieving our goal. And then we review those on a monthly basis. I have the opportunity to look at the files of all the children in the organization once every month. So I have a week that is dedicated to just sitting in the office and I'm going through the files. I'm looking at the pictures, I'm looking at the counseling reports, I'm getting to ask questions. Why did we do this? Why did we not do that? Why haven't we gone this step ahead? And then on the system, I have access to all the other programs. When they input data, then I can just log in and see what has been done, what is the follow-up on this one, what needs to be done differently. And at the end of that day, you're able to see that you're not losing your main focus, is that this girl must thrive. In our mission is that at the end of that day, they should be thriving according to God's purpose for their lives. So whether that means they have gone back to school and they are completing a certain level of education, they are being resettled in a family and they're able to have a business, they are in a business club and they are not begging for survival, but they are earning with dignity. Basically, that is where we put our focus on. And if it's not working, then we get back to the drawing board and say, these 3 families are failing. What else can we do? Do we need to link them to another organization that has the capacity to care for their needs that we don't have? And then we do just that. We'll either make a referral or we make a special, again, individual care program for these ones. That is how, for some families, we ended up building houses because it's not part of our general programming, but then we realize that if you're going to bring this family together and keep them together, you need to solve the housing issue. And then for Baby Promise, for example, the baby that Mama Christina has been talking about, realize she needs specialized health care. And it's not what all the other babies need, but for this one, there has to be an individualized care program. So for her mother, she will have to stay in the shelter longer, because then if we take her back home, there is no care, there is no transportation, there is no access, it is expensive. The hospitals are in Kampala, her family is in Lyantonde. So now it's a completely different plan from what we had when we first got her. So that is how we keep the focus on, in terms of interventions and tracking for results.
Excellent. So really having kind of a systematic planning, a review of those plans, and then when something falls outside the scope of your competency base or really your area of expertise, being able to connect with other organizations who can help solve those these are very complex situations with the families and with the girls. So, Christina, what would you like to add to how you keep
Only
the
a
focus?
little tiny bit, because there's another podcast that needs to happen at this time, and you have to go catch an airplane.
All right.
But you mentioned the word competency, and that was something we looked at a few years ago at Impact Nations. We as a board, we discussed what are our core competencies and what is going well and what are some things that we feel we need to let go of. So we had attempted time and time again with some land, actually here in Uganda, to have a farming program. And we didn't have the right people, it wasn't the right time, and it wasn't being successful. And we really felt like we should not be in the farming business. Interestingly enough, right here at ERA 92, something that Trinity has picked up on has been taking that to the Chaka refugee camp, and we're kind of trying it again with a different program and focus. So we'll see how that goes. But that was one we felt like, no, it's not our main thing. Another one was child sponsorship programs. We did that for many years. And we began to realize that for us, it wasn't sustainable. And it was dependent on individual donors, and we just felt like, no, this is other organizations, just like what you said, other organizations are doing that and doing it well. And so we're not going to keep that as part of our core competencies. And so I think that's one, it's good to know who you are and what you're for, and then assess that and decide, does this fit, does this not fit? And sometimes you only find out by doing it that it doesn't fit. Skills training is a huge issue. It's so funny because here in Uganda they use the word skilling. We don't tend to use that in the West, but I've caught it everywhere, and it's an important word to them. We are skilling these people. So that would be my one comment on that, and I'm sorry that we have to.
So thank you so much. I mean, I really, really feel
We didn't
privileged.
get on to it. The last one was legacy. You
Ah,
wanted
that's,
to talk about.
that's okay. I feel really privileged that I've had the chance to interview you today. Certainly taking away a lot of gems. I love what you said about a leader is the first custodian of culture, and also talking about, again, coming back to that point of essential ingredients for leadership around communication, inclusiveness, accessibility, role, relationship, results, development, and legacy. So if you're just tuning in now, you'll have to go back and watch parts of the podcast. You can view the entire interview on the Impact Nations website, and I'll leave the link for that below. So I want to say thank you again to Annabelle from the Remnant Generation and Christina from Impact Nation.
Thank you so much.
Thank
and
you.
I would love it if we managed to cover the other topics at some point via Zoom or something.
I know,
yeah.
We'll be in 3 different continents.
I know, I have the feeling we could chat for another 3 hours here. But
5. We could just have coffee and just keep going.
So thank you so much. So I'm going to end with the world does not benefit from you playing small. So
That's
thank you
good.
for sharing today. All right. Bye.